BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNed88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And just a quick reminder, every Monday is Zodiac Mondays. Wednesday is an Ask Me Anything. That's an AMA, so please drop your questions below for things that you would like discussed here on the show. And Friday is an Anything Goes. Any subject is fair game, mostly talking about true crime, serial killers, the Zodiac Killer, but any subject is welcome. All right, so please share some ideas in the comment section about what you would like to hear about on this channel, and let's get started. Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to this special Thursday episode of BBOR. And I have one quick announcement before we begin. I have applied for something with Magellan TV. They have this kind of job offering. I mean, I don't even really know what to call it. But in short, they're saying that they're going to pay people to sit around and watch true crime documentaries. And they're actually going to be paying $100 an hour. Once again, it's with Magellan TV. Went to their website today. Somebody posted about it on Facebook, and I replied to it. And if anybody else would like to give it a shot and do an application with them, I think it's available at their website. And some of the documentaries they want people to watch would be A Shallow Grave, A Monster Among Us, Crossbow Killer, Night Terror, Murder in Paradise, Jonestown, Paradise Lost. I would love to do that one. The Family Inside the Manson Cult. Absolutely, that one, even above Jim Jones and such. The Price of Honor, Crime Files, The Great Mint Swindle, and Chain Gang Girls, which is 135 minutes long. Chain Gang Girls, that better be exactly what it's describing. But yes, I guess it's sort of, I mean, they called it like the dream job application. That's what they were calling it. So I was like, yeah, I would like to do that. And they especially want people to do this and live stream while they're watching these true crime documentaries. Once again, this is an offer from Magellan TV. Moving on to today's topic. First, I have to give a shout out to Gregory, who sent me the material for this one. This was sent into BlackBoxOnlineRadio at AOL.com. Anybody can write the show at that email address. It's posted in the description box. And his message says, "Hey Ned, I hope this finds you well. I wanted to run something past you. As you know, Thomas Horan has promoted the Zodiac hoax theory, wherein Hal Snook and various others have collaborated to tie together random murders. One of the key components behind this theory is the similarity in Hal Snook's handwriting. And the similarity is supposedly in Snook's handwriting in the Lake Berryessa police report, as it compares to what is contained in the Zodiac letters. So I recently obtained a copy of Snook's military registration card and the handwriting on it, including his signature, which is wildly different as to how it appears at the Lake Berryessa report. This leads me to the question, were the police reports in some way a forgery? Could the police report have been a forgery, a deliberate attempt, perhaps even by the Zodiac, to try creating suspicion around Snook? If so, it certainly has worked. I honestly don't like going down these conspiratorial rabbit holes, and I don't believe any sort of inside job or fantastic trickery is going on here. In recent years, people who it seemed were only trying to do their job or facilitate the investigation in some capacity, could it be Donald Hardin, Don Chaney, Hal Snook, Richard Hoffman, have all somehow become suspects on the internet. But I'm legitimately curious about the discrepancy between Snook's handwriting and the signature as it appears on his draft card versus the Lake Berryessa report. Would wonder what Thomas Horan might conclude as well. I'm including both documents for you, and let me know what you think. Thanks, Greg." And much appreciated, Gregory, and I would just say again, anybody can suggest things for future episodes, either here in the comment section or to the email, but the topic list is getting very large. Now, I will forward this on to Thomas Henry Horan, but I think that there are ways that I can take a stab at this first. And if we look at the two documents that are in question, one of them is the handwriting from Hal Snook after Lake Berryessa. Really, the date of it is 9/27/69, and the other one is that military registration card. The first point I would like to do is to share something where I am in 100% agreement with Gregory, and that is that the signature on the registration card is absolutely different than on the Lake Berryessa report. And this says Harold K. Snook actually on the registration card, and it's almost chicken scratch on the other report, but I mean, quite clearly, I believe, though, it is saying Hal Snook. He's referring to himself as Hal instead of Harold on that one. Now, you also might be wondering something if we look at the two documents, and that is that on the military registration card, the majority of it is written in cursive, whereas the Lake Berryessa report has been printed. But there are several printed words and letters and names. I mean, definitely the name Harold K. Snook is written in print, and then there are some other ones. P.O. Box has also been printed. So the first point, yes, it is a different signature. But even when you look at the handwriting on the Lake Berryessa report, I mean, that definitely looks like the Zodiac Killer. Pull up some of the first Zodiac Killer letters, maybe not the Melvin Belli one, but the things that were mailed before November 9th of 1969. Very similar handwriting coming from Hal Snook. The first time I saw Hal Snook's handwriting, I was like, oh my gosh, that's the Zodiac Killer's handwriting. This is all true. And you heard what Gregory was saying in the email. This leads into the Zodiac hoax theory. The idea that this guy, Hal Snook, was writing letters taking credit for murders that he didn't commit. And there are a couple resources on the channel if you'd like a longer explanation. There's a book discussion on the myth of the Zodiac Killer by Thomas Henry Horan. There's Zodiac Hoax Theory open discussion, which isn't about a book or anything, just drawing on all the sources about that. Is this the answer to the Zodiac mystery? Was someone writing letters taking credit for crimes that he did not commit? And you can even find the Great Zodiac Killer Hoax of 1986 book discussion. But is this the same person who wrote Hal Snook's registration card as the Lake Berryessa report? Because that's the challenge question. What I'd like to do now is zone in on a very particular letter, and that is the letter L. If we go to the name that has been printed on his registration card, and you see the name Harold, there's a very almost, I mean, I'm tempted to say the word unique shape to that letter L, or it's something that is different, and it is definitely something that is a little bit atypical. Now, if we go to the Lake Berryessa report, you can see that there's also that same style of L. It goes down just a little bit, and there's almost an arch. There's a very rounded, flat line. I mean, excuse me, there's supposed to be a flat line at the bottom of an L, but this one is very round. That is something that is consistent with what is written on the Lake Berryessa report. And then the next thing I was thinking, I really wanted to entertain this idea that Gregory was pushing, but I noticed that the letter L, when it is printed in the big block of handwritten text below, there is one that also has this same very definitive, almost an arch in it. So that's something that I think is very important to note. That is something that is consistent. I'm not a handwriting expert in any way. I definitely am just some guy who is looking at this and making some observations. But I think that we also have to make the we have to have the expectation that on a military registration card, Hal Snook would probably have tried much harder to have very neat penmanship, whereas in the Lake Berryessa report, as you see, multiple paragraphs have been written in a space that does not have any lines, and then there's all the there's the tilt, there is the borderline disorganized writing. That's another point that I would like to highlight, but let's also have an overall exploratory discussion about this possibility. Did Hal Snook write the letters? Is that Hal Snook's handwriting? I mean, you can see this Lake Berryessa report, and we can compare it to some of the other Zodiac Killer letters. Some of the rebuttals to Thomas Henry Horan's claim that he has found with certainty that Hal Snook wrote the letters come from, well, various people throughout Zodiac research. One of them is, of course, Tom Foy, who provided the simple explanation. There's no evidence to connect Hal Snook to anything. He just had similar handwriting. Some people are going to have similar handwriting, and that is the first rebuttal, because bear in mind that Thomas Henry Horn, for the most part, does not accuse Hal Snook of committing the Zodiac murders, with the exception of the murder of Paul Stine. He said that it was possible that Paul Stine could have been murdered by Hal Snook, but as I understand, Thomas Horn is going to reveal a new suspect in the murder of Paul Stine. I can't even tell you who that is because he has yet to go public with that. But the next point is that this draws on its own set of ethical questions, because I was discussing the hoax theory with Mark Hewitt when I interviewed him here on this channel, and I said I'm doing this book discussion on the myth of the Zodiac Killer by Thomas Henry Horn that puts forward this idea that Hal Snook wrote the letters, and he said something to the effect of, Hal Snook was a well-respected Napa County narcotics officer, and his name is practically being dragged through the mud with all of these accusations, when once again, there isn't consensus among the entirety of humanity that Hal Snook is the person who wrote the letters. Otherwise, the Zodiac mystery would have been solved long ago. And that he's not accusing someone who has been accused of any crime in the formal sense. I mean, he definitely hasn't been charged with the crime, is more or less what I meant to say. So that's another point that we should also just be somewhat aware of, that Hal Snook was never charged with this, and there are a few other responses to Hal Snook writing the letters, and one of them is that, well, Hal Snook's handwriting is not an identical match. There might be some similarities, and if you can look at it for yourself compared to the other Zodiac letters, it definitely at first glance absolutely looks like it is the same handwriting. But Evan from Texas has a great video out there about how there's this explanation provided about why it's not an identical match, and that, in short, it could be that whoever wrote the letters was using all of the basic tactics to disguise someone's handwriting, like literally going through the manual on tactics that are used to disguise someone's handwriting, so that if a handwriting expert were to go through that, they would notice things so easily that they would begin to suspect, hey, wait a second, is this somebody from law enforcement? Once again, that video is available on the channel Evan from Texas. And yes, I mean, I hope I'm being very clear, he is supporting the hoax theory in that one. And the tactics that he's talking about, the abnormal tilt to the right that is found in the Zodiac letters, turning the paper upside down to write some of the letters, and he even points out some peculiarities in Hal Snook's handwriting that can be found in the that can be found on Zodiac letters, as well as in and on documents that have been written by Hal Snook. So, to respond directly to the question, do you believe that maybe someone else was messing around with some documents and there is either two sets of handwriting on the Lake Berryessa report, or that certain parts of it were forged? I would also point out one thing about the signature. Upon closer inspection, there's a very particular way that the H is structured in both Harold and Hal. Harold on the military registration card, and Hal Snook's signature on the Lake Berryessa report. And it has almost like an arm. I think that's the handwriting term for it. There's this arm that comes down to the left on the H, the capitalized H, that is the first letter in Harold and Hal. That is something that also appears to be consistent. If I have to give a 100% 100% unprofessional opinion, I think that it was written by the same person, that Hal Snook wrote the military registration card and the Lake Berryessa report. It's just on the registration card because it was a document that was firstly shorter, so you can pay a little bit more attention to. He didn't need to write so much. And the second thing is because it was perhaps viewed as something a little bit more formal, he wanted to pay closer attention to his penmanship, even though you would think something such as a police report would be viewed as a very formal document, but it's much lengthier, and when people are writing longer documents, they perhaps just want to get it done for the sake of efficiency, maybe writing a little bit more quickly, but he took a lot more, spent a lot more time trying to get the registration card in a neat and orderly fashion. But I guess I had pointed out two particular things. The letter H in the signature seems to be a little bit similar. It's the signature on the Lake Berryessa port was definitely written faster, it appears, but that particular letter L seems to stand out in a much more definitive fashion. Okay, now please stay tuned, and we'll talk more about the Zodiac killer hoax theory right after this quick message. Bum ba bum 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 ba bum 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 ba bum bum bum. At this time, I would like to talk about some of the ways in which you can help Black Box Online Radio. This channel relies on your support, and the best way you can help out is just by listening to some more content. If you like what you hear, you can hit that like button, subscribe, and share with your friends on social media. But I should also say that Black Box Online Radio now has a Teespring page, and there will be some links in the description box. Please feel free to check out some of the merchandise that is available. Almost all sizes and colors are listed. So, you can also help out by going over to the Zodiac Killer channel and watching the documentary series Obsession into Darkness, parts 1, 2, and 3. I was one of the contributors for that, and you can see some other great Zodiac content on the Zodiac Killer channel. And yes, there will be a part 4 of Obsession into Darkness at some point in the future. And for now, let's get back to the show. Okay, hello, and we are back. So to talk about the Zodiac Killer hoax theory, I have found that this is a true crime theory that is quite different because it's an attempt to solve a murder mystery, but even in some variants of the hoax theory, you don't even know who the murderers are. I mean, yes, of course, multiple killers in an unconnected way. And I used to have this kind of suspicion and curiosity and just think like many people, were the Zodiac crimes that occurred in 1968 and 69 planned and organized by multiple people? Well, in the case of the hoax theory, there would be multiple people involved, but in an unconnected way, not like an organized group, but of a completely unconnected set of murders that took place, as Gregory wrote in the email. And then the theory is that this guy, Hal Snook, a Napa County narcotics officer, wrote letters taking credit for murders that he did not commit. But as far as the Lake Berryessa report goes, Hal Snook's presence at the crime scene, at a crime scene in the Zodiac chronology, is definitely there at Lake Berryessa, because he's the person who made the casts of the footprints that the perpetrator at Lake Berryessa left behind. And of course, as we said, he's a Napa County deputy. Lake Berryessa was, of course, in Napa County, and even on the document that Gregory had sent me, Napa County is written on the letterhead, if that's the official term for it. But a lot of people have trouble accepting this because they, firstly, as I said, we don't always know who the exact murderers were. As after I went through some of Thomas Henry Horan's stuff, a possible layout of this was that at Lake Herman Road on December 20th, 1968, David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen may have been murdered by an individual named David Walliot, who was sort of a middle-level criminal in California. He was definitely connected to various aspects of the drug trade, as well as possibly being an informant who would get certain people arrested for small-time drug dealing, and he was someone who was a little bit outside the realm of the law. In short, he committed lots of crimes, and because he was an informant, it's more or less his actions were covered up. I think that that is a big nutshell version. It's actually a very large story, but he may have been the shooter at Lake Herman Road in the hoax theory, or there could have been somebody else. The Blue Rock Springs shooting could have been committed by at least three different people have been accused in the hoax theory, and that is that one is named Donald Warren Porter, another has named Jim Phillips Crabtree, the former husband of Darlene Ferrin, and even Richard Hoffman has been not exactly accused, but there's one sentence in the book, The Myth of the Zodiac Killer, that says, "Was Hoffman the shooter?" And the reasons why people suspect Richard Hoffman of having any involvement in the Blue Rock Springs shooting is because he's also at the scene prior to the Blue Rock Springs shooting. I mean, maybe as little as 10 minutes before the shooting took place, he's doing a patrol in Blue Rock Springs Park, so he is very close by, and there definitely is something suspicious surrounding him. Richard Hoffman was also listed in Robert Graysmith's book as being a friend or acquaintance of Darlene Ferrin and being in her house for a party that she had held. But of course, when Richard Hoffman was interviewed on camera, he was like, I don't know why Graysmith put that in his book. I didn't know Darlene Ferrin. So there's some suspicious things in his story. So that's up to Blue Rock Springs on the 4th of July. Then, if you go to Lake Berryessa, you have a couple different suspects. One of them is named Dennis Land, the first park ranger who was on the scene, and he is, I guess, an associate of Hal Snook would be the way to describe him. I'm not even completely sure of all the details of their relationship, but he was a student of Hal Snook's at Napa Valley Junior College, as well as rumored to have visited Hal Snook's sporting goods store that he owned, and they may have even been hunting buddies or fishing buddies or something to that effect, but I think those details are almost getting a little bit uncertain. I don't want to say something that would be an overreach. So the next point is that I said there's at least one more suspect. Thomas Henry Horn also has a new suspect for the Lake Berryessa stabbing, and I don't even want to speculate on that because, as I said, those things haven't been revealed. In the past, there have been a couple different suspects for the Paul Stine murder that occurred on October 11th. One of them was a Jordanian immigrant named Hesham Syed, who was a Christian Arab who had come over with many other refugees, and they all worked in restaurants, and I believe Hesham Syed even worked at the Crestmont Diner, where Paul Stine allegedly picked up his fare, and then they drove him to a particular location. I definitely do not like this theory that Paul Stine's murder was a type of botched taxi cab robbery, because that's the whole thing about this Jordanian immigrant angle. He committed some taxi cab robberies, and here's the problem with that. I mean, I don't even know if this is a problem, but here's one thing. You're going to commit a taxi cab robbery in downtown San Francisco? You're going to commit a taxi cab robbery like that in Presidio Heights? Why? For what reason? You could tell a taxi cab driver, hey, drive me to the middle of nowhere or something, and you're going to do that in like an area where you're going to be witnessed by multiple people. The only thing that would support that theory is that whoever shot Paul Stine on October 11th got away and they were never seen from again, but I definitely have suspicions about that. Another person who has been accused of the murder of Paul Stine is Hal Snook himself, the suspect for writing the letters, and being very clear in the hoax theory, just writing the letters, not committing all of the murders, but or I should also say, not even organizing all of the murders, writing letters taking credit for crimes he did not commit. And then the next level of this is that Horn has a new suspect that he says he will reveal in the near future. And I quote, he has cracked the murder of Paul Stine. So this one could be really big. I'm quite curious to know what he has to say. So I think, as you can see, there are many different people involved. And this is the big part of it, why people are very reluctant to accept the hoax theory. If you go to my original book discussion, The Great Zodiac Killer Hoax of 1986, here on this channel, and I think it's 17 parts long, but the last two are just kind of like the ending conclusion notes. They're only about 2 minutes long each, but there are 15 episodes in that. And over on ZodiacKillerFacts.com, Michael Butterfield has written an 8-part article series about the Zodiac hoax theory, and it's practically identical. I mean, we're sharing the same type of ideas and criticisms. I mean, either one you can read or listen to, because, firstly, it's quite surprising how many people get involved in the Zodiac killer crimes. Like, how many people did I just say already? I mean, maybe this person, maybe that person, or maybe some of them are working together. The list of people that would be involved with that just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you go over to some of the other claims. I think it's just, well, it's actually from Mark Hewitt, to be honest, something that he also said when he was talking about the hoax theory in our interview, and that is that what Thomas Henry Horn is doing is he's attributing the different roles in the Zodiac crimes to different people. Like, as we said, one person committed the Lake Herman Road murders, and then another person committed the Blue Rock Springs shooting. Every different crime has a different person attached to it. And this even goes to a different person wrote the letters, a different person wrote the ciphers. So you can see how it's just adding up, because I said that in the book discussion. Michael Butterfield wrote it. Everybody is pointing that out. Wow, the list of people who are viewed as active participants in this is getting rather large. And somebody even asked me that question once on the channel. Why do you insist that the hoax theory has to have so many people involved? And I'm like, well, I didn't insist anything. That's the way it's written in the book. I think that it could be a very simple arrangement. I mean, just to simply say one person wrote letters taking credit for murders that he did not commit. Why? I mean, I think that that's still the subject of some debate and discussion. I don't think it's completely clear. There are different possibilities that have been proposed about why Hal Snook would have written the letters, but I don't think that it has been completely certified in any of the publications about the Great Zodiac Killer hoax as to a single motive. But the other parts of criticism are that from time to time there will be a few inaccuracies in the myth of the Zodiac Killer and the Great Zodiac Killer hoax theory. Tom Voigt was very keen to point out originally that it stated that the Lake Berryessa stabbing took place on September 30th, and it was described as a knife point abduction. But of course, the perpetrator was there at September 27th, held them up at gunpoint, tied them up, and then stabbed them without moving the bodies at all. And then the next part is that there was something that Richard Grinnell had sent in to the channel criticizing the myth of the Zodiac Killer, because Thomas Warren accused Robert Graysmith of lying when he said that the perpetrator from the eyewitness reports after the Stine shooting was described as somebody who was around 40 years old, when in reality the eyewitnesses saw a 25 to 30-year-old man, and Richard's response was that was not from an eyewitness sighting. That was the age that was attributed to the composite sketch. And there's an article about this on ZodiacCiphers.com, which goes on to say that Mike Mageau perhaps described the glimpse of the person that he saw at Blue Rock Springs as maybe around 25 years old or up that in that range, and Brian Hartnell described the voice that he heard at Lake Berryessa maybe between 20 and 30. So that is why the age was attributed to the composite sketch in that way, based on what people had were but based on the previous descriptions from Mike Mageau and Brian Hartnell, the two of the surviving victims, whereas the eyewitnesses never reported seeing a 25-year-old after the Stine shooting. And then another one that Richard shared with me after I did the book discussion on the myth of the Zodiac Killer was Thomas Horn, of course, provided a solution to the 340 cipher that turned out to be perhaps not so accurate. And I don't even think I can fault anybody for that, because if you go on Black Box Online Radio, you will even find my own solution to the 340 cipher that I put out about 2 weeks prior to David Oranchak, and as well as Sam Blake and Ural Van Eyck's solution that is now widely accepted. So, yeah, I can't really fault anybody for that, because a lot of people have put forward ideas, let alone Robert Graysmith had one. How about Kelly Marshall? Numerous people claimed that they had cracked the Zodiac's Z340 before before these other guys did in the most recent times. So I think that in response to the Zodiac hoax theory, there are certain imperfections and details that need more attention. There are certain areas that need to be smoothed out and they need to be worked over. And perhaps there could be things that need to be scrapped and go straight back to the drawing board. But number one, there definitely is not consensus among everybody that one person was writing letters taking credit for murders that he did not commit. Number two, there is also an issue with listing any type of multiple killers theory. I think it was Jamie Hendrickson who wrote in the comments section that if you're going to say that there were multiple killers in the Zodiac mystery, you have to start making assumptions. And it's because if there isn't certifiable proof, it's just turning one into two in in an assumptive way. And to the credit of Tom Voigt, who's trying to give a hard challenge to this, he is pointing out that one person could have committed all of the canonical Zodiac crimes, including the murder of Sherry Jo Bates. There was also one set of footprints that went to and from the Carmen Gia, where Brian Hartnell had parked. Like the perpetrator had walked down to where Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were on the blanket at Lake Berryessa on the 27th of September, not the 30th, and stabbed them, and then walked back and written the message on the car door. So that seems to be all fairly consistent with a single perpetrator. Also, this is my own response as a challenge to the hoax theory, and this is not anything that I can bring into a court of law, but I feel that the clues that are tied to literature and art and music and even mathematics are so personal that it doesn't really feel like it is completely, well, just someone who's trying to pull a fast one and trying to deceive people into thinking that it is a Zodiac killer hoax, that someone is writing letters taking credit for murders that they did not commit based on all of this significance. I mean, you don't have to use works of literature as your inspiration for that. You don't have to fill mathematical signatures into your into this mystery for that. You don't have to have all these references to the Mikado and to T.S. Eliot and to Herman Melville, as well as the Tim Hole comics and Red Rider. All of those things sound like someone is really sharing their favorite works of art and literature, or the inspirations about why they committed these crimes, not about why they're pretending to have committed these murders and writing letters taking credit for crimes that they did not commit. It appears that someone is trying to show that they've committed these crimes for a reason, and it is to create a criminal masterpiece that is loaded with signatures, and as we said, from literature, from music, and even mathematics. So that's not anything other than my own superficial analysis, which goes perfectly with my superficial analysis in interpreting the handwriting. Although I did kind of come to the conclusion at the end of part one that I would have to say that I believe Hal Snook wrote both that report and the military registration card based on the reasons that I said before, just being 100% clear about that. But with the hoax theory, there is a very wide array of possibilities that could have taken place. And some people say that the Zodiac hoax theory is an absolute conspiracy. It's a conspiracy theory. And yes, it is. But here's the thing though, sometimes conspiracy theories can turn out to be true. The criticisms that people have is that, number one, someone used the word inside job. It might have been Mike Morford, but I forget the person who had written this out. But they're like, oh, it's always falling back on that explanation that it's an inside job. But I think conspiracy theory would be the alternative, or a more appropriate term to describe it. Like, when something happens that hasn't been accounted for in the past, you can always just say, well, it was a different active participant that filled that role. Whereas if you have a single perpetrator theory, then you can't just say, hey, wait a second, how did this person do that when they were out of town on this one day? Oh, well, then you would have to add in a second perpetrator who would have committed that act. And then the hoax theory is doing that, but on steroids. No matter any time there is something that doesn't add up, you can just say that, well, there's another person working behind the scenes who acted as an active participant to further the Zodiac killer hoax. The idea that one person was writing letters taking credit for murders that he didn't commit. So it can just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think that's quite similar to what Mark Hewitt said about just attributing the different roles in the case to different people. But the other second criticism is that if you put your conspiracy theory everywhere, then you're never going to be wrong. And that is not from the hoax theory. You can go back on Black Box Online Radio and find all of these uploads about conspiracy theories. The Psychology of Conspiracy Theories was one that came out recently. And it's just talking about some similar things. If you put your theory in all different places, then something some way, somehow, is going to come back, and you're going to find out that it's going to appear that the conspiracy theorist is telling the truth. But basically, if you just say yes to everything, then no one can prove you wrong. Or that even if one aspect of your theory is wrong, then you can be like, oh yeah, that thing was wrong, but this other thing I said was right. I even said that in my first ever response to the Zodiac Killer hoax theory, which was called Zodiac Killer Thomas Horn Theory. It's still out on this channel. I mean, actually, that was the second one, but not important. It's my introduction was everything you think about the Zodiac Killer mystery is true. There's a narcotics angle, there's a Zodiac Manson connection angle, there is a CIA operative angle, there are multiple killers, or there's also a single perpetrator. And all of those pieces come together. And even if one of them is wrong, well, you can be like, oh yeah, but this other stuff could be right. And that is not even a criticism of Thomas Henry Horn. No, absolutely not. That is a general statement about conspiracy theories and how they function. When we look at Hal Snook as a suspect for writing the letters, there's a certain degree of merit in that. And I don't want to downplay that. I think that Hal Snook is somebody who deserves a fair amount of consideration. Another rebuttal that Tom Voigt has posted is that nobody in law enforcement thinks that Hal Snook actually wrote the letters. It's Thomas Henry Horn, in short, got on the internet. He was using the Zodiac Killer forum to find a way to work out the kinks in his theory to make sure that it worked, but law enforcement doesn't even view this as any possible chance of being true. And I contacted Thomas Horan about that because I wanted to have his comment on how they'll just respond to that. Does anybody in law enforcement actually think that either Hal Snook wrote the letters or the Zodiac hoax theory is true? And his response is, and I quote, Napa detective Patrick McMahon thinks I'm right about the handprinting comparison, but was flabbergasted when I pointed out that the letters were a hoax and not from the killer. He never followed up with me. You can email him at the Napa County Sheriff's Office. He's a lieutenant now. He was at the end of his cold case grant and dropped hints that he was close to naming the Zodiac. When I contacted him about this and saved him the embarrassment, this was about 10 years ago. He really had the facts of the case memorized, but he had not noticed the discrepancies with Graysmith's book because he had never read it. Being clear, it says he had not noticed them because he did not read Graysmith's book. And at the time, I had been told that the handprinting was Deputy Ray Land's, but McMahon did not set me straight, but he dropped the investigation and moved on. So I think that is a response. There was somebody who does seem to agree that Hal Snook may have been a suspect in the letters, and I hope that last part was clear, that they looked at Ray Land as well, who is the brother of Dennis Land, that park ranger from Lake Berryessa, as a suspect for writing the letters, but the long story short is no one has ever been officially named to that, and that's why it's an unsolved case. The the final thing I would like to do is to take another attempt to respond to Thomas Henry Horn's big challenge question. What is one piece of physical evidence that unites any of the Zodiac Killer crimes, Lake Herman Road, Blue Rock Springs, Lake Berryessa, and the Paul Stine murder, these four canonical crimes? What is something that is physical that could unite them? Because I think that the responses I've heard from other people are, I think Drew Beeson said, if we had answers like that, then the case would have been solved long ago. And Mark Hewitt said something very similar. Mark Hewitt, of course, author of the Hunted trilogy. That's why it is an unsolved case. If we had fingerprints from the same person at two different crime scenes, then it would be over and done with. Or, more or less, all Thomas Horn is doing is saying that the case is unsolved and that he's allowed to speculate in a broader direction than most people, because most people are very suspect focused and they want to zone in on a single perpetrator and a single suspect. And most people, I do think, still believe that there was a single Zodiac killer. What I see from you guys in the comment section is a lot of people are saying they think there was one Zodiac, but it wasn't any of the major suspects. It wasn't any of the famous suspects. Instead, they think that it's going to be solved by DNA, much like a Golden State Killer ending. DNA, fingerprints, maybe palm prints and things of that nature will give us answers, and it's going to be somebody that was so far off the radar, nobody even thought twice about him. But I mentioned Drew Beeson, he's the author of the book Sighting In on the Zodiac Killer, and a lot of people are looking at his material surrounding Don Chaney. He was the subject of 2 recent episodes mentioned in the AMA on Wednesday, but there was a book discussion on Sighting In on the Zodiac Killer recently for Zodiac Mondays. I would invite anybody to listen to those if they haven't heard them yet. Okay, so thank you to anyone who has made it to the end of this discussion on the Zodiac hoax theory. And a lot of this has been shared in little bits of segments all across the channel, but I wanted to respond to everything once again. Thank you to Tom Voigt for writing some of the notes. Thank you to Thomas Horan for writing some of the notes, as well as Drew Beeson, Mark Hewitt, Michael Butterfield, all of you guys for sharing and contributing, and Richard Grinnell and Evan from Texas. I didn't forget you guys, as well as you and the listeners in the comments section. You guys leave some brilliant comments. Much appreciated. Well, that's all from me now. I will see you guys on Instagram, BlackBoxNed88 on Instagram, for the bonus podcast. Until next time.